we've talked about why we should do this. Let's actually start digging into where to start, right? I'm going to ask a provocative question here. I asked this to the ACT staff when we did our little rehearsal yesterday, and they were desperately wanting to know the right answer. So let's see what you folks come up with. This is one of my favorite quotes about autism. It's Stephen Shore. He says, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. Or if you prefer, autistic person. So the question I want to ask is, does the autism diagnosis give you a clue as to which sports or activities that your child will enjoy? All right. So, but majority of people said no, some maybes, some yeses. Now, this was a bit of a trick question because I don't know. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. So sometimes I think, particularly before, there was a lot of, you could use the word stereotyping, I think, of this person has autism, this person's autistic, therefore they would enjoy X, Y, Z. We do know that to have an autism diagnosis, there are shared characteristics. So we know that folks on the autism spectrum are, the social communication is sometimes a challenge. There can be sensory sensitivities. This is obviously a very brief capturing of autism, but many other things, right, like can go along with autism. And I have highlighted at the bottom as well, and many strengths and many interests, because all of these individuals certainly have their own uniqueness, right? So yes, there are some commonalities, but also lots and lots of uniqueness. So I'm going to share with you just a few examples of what I think are somewhat non-conventional sports, activities that folks with autism have really gotten involved with. This is a specific young person who I have met and worked with on a number of occasions. His kind of, I don't even know what you call this. In the skateboarding community, he is known as Killa B. And Killa B has an autism diagnosis. He's nominated this year for Autism BC's Self-Advocate of the Year Award. His story is, I think he was 4 or young, 6, 7, went surfing with his dad in Tofino. This was fairly shortly after receiving the autism diagnosis. And it had been a really challenging time for the family. They were feeling a little bit unsure about what their next steps were going to be. And they went to Tofino because dad, in this case, was very involved, really enjoyed surfing. And they took Killa B out in the waves as a young child. And his face lit up. He was happy. And it was some of the first, or what I should say is maybe some of the most joyous expressions they had ever seen from him. And it was obviously very impactful for them to see their son really light up like that. Totally unexpected. They had no idea what to expect. So as a result of this event, this family has actually started an annual event called Surfs Up, where they invite families who have a child with autism to come to Tofino, and they, for free, they provide tons of surf instructors from the local community, and they also gather a team of volunteers who are people who have experience supporting children and youth with autism. Canucks Autism Network is a partner on this event. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't turn that off. Sorry. And we take kids out surfing. And it is, I tell people this, and they often have a reaction like this, sort of like, really? Is that something that you do? I have to tell you, I participated in this event for 5 years, I think, and it is one of my favorite weekends of the year, hands down. Because not only is it an amazing community builder when you have all these families together, enjoying themselves, but watching the kids have this experience is amazing. Obviously, it's not about, getting the kids paddling way out and catching huge waves and, doing crazy stuff. It's about setting them on a surfboard, taking them out, 2 or 3 adults supporting them, and they're having a great time. They ride the waves in. Lots of the kids stand up, which is very impressive. And it's all about sort of their motto they're called the SUPA Society, and their motto is very much about breaking barriers. So changing perceptions about what's possible for kids and youth with autism. Now, Killa B is also an accomplished skateboarder. He recently earned his instructor certificate, so he now teaches, and he's internationally ranked as well in the park. So impressive stuff, and I would say a fairly non-traditional choice. So again, sharing this just to say, here's a non-traditional choice that this is a local guy, and I'm seeing him really excel and certainly get a lot of joy and many of the benefits we already talked about through his participation in these activities. If you'd like to learn more about SUPA, I've added their website there. You can check that out. Here's another unconventional one. These are all Canadians that I'm featuring, you know, Canada. This young man is from Uxbridge, Ontario, which is very close to my hometown, which is, you know, part of the reason I thought I'd put him up. He tours and discusses his career as a race car driver. I have not personally met him or seen his events. I just thought he was very interesting, and that it was just another example of perhaps a non-conventional choice. Something where clearly he's very passionate about it, he's experiencing a lot of joy doing it, and maybe something that, you know, lots of folks wouldn't even consider. Now there are more, this is, I would say, actually starting to fall more into the category of traditional. So this is a young man who's a runner based in Ottawa, Ontario. One thing I thought was very interesting about his story, so he's quite accomplished now. He was picked as a hopeful for the Paralympic Games that were supposed to occur this past summer in Tokyo. But something I thought was really interesting about Tommy was, you know, I read a bit about his backstory, and this was an individual who, very active young child, like he was walking and moving around quite a bit by 8 months. But someone who didn't speak at all until he was 8 years old. And again, I think sometimes we have these beliefs about what's possible or about what kids can do, you know, based on the way that they talk or communicate or what have you. And clearly these things are not necessarily correlated, right? So there are actually a few cases now of individuals on the spectrum who, or autistic adults if you prefer, who have really excelled in athletics and are not, and also still have a number of challenges as well related to autism. So cool. Now, here's one that I hear all the time. Team sports. She has autism, so maybe team sports aren't the right option. And I'm going to say, maybe, maybe not, right? For some individuals, this really is not their jam. They don't enjoy things like soccer and basketball and baseball. I got to say, I kind of fall in this category a bit. I sort of personally prefer individual sports as opposed to team sports. But there are many examples now emerging as kind of autism becomes much more on the radar these days. We have people who are diagnosed with autism and achieving really well in sport. So we saw our first draft picked by the Kansas City Royals, an athlete with autism. Same in basketball, you've got your first Div 1 athlete, 2019, someone with an autism diagnosis. And in hockey as well, so 2014 we saw a draft pick to the NHL New York Islanders, individual diagnosed with autism. So all of this to say is that, you know, does autism give you a clue about which types of activities your child might enjoy? I really think you need to know your child. So for some children, starting in a team sport environment is probably going to feel very overwhelming. If you think about team sports, there's a lot of layers there, right? There's learning the physical skill of the activity, so physically being able to follow along in drills which require you to have a fair amount of coordination, and you're moving and dribbling a ball and all those body awareness skills. And layered on top of that, there are a fair number of requirements to be able to follow group instructions, right? Some kids, they're right in there because they're really enjoying themselves and they're okay. Other kids, that layering becomes quite a lot to manage. So maybe that's not the place to start, right? So maybe an easier entry to start is some of those activities that are a little bit more individual. And boy, are there a big range, right? So you can look at even an activity like swimming, where you can start in lessons, right? We can talk about that later. Many things we could talk about with swimming lessons. But swimming is a really interesting example of a sport that is quite individual, but can also have a social component as you move through, right? So swimming, you can start by really working on your own skills. You can always go to the pool and swim by yourself or swim with your family. But if it's a sport that really takes hold for your child, there's so many opportunities to be involved in things like swim clubs that provide that blend of a sport where it's individual and you're doing your own race, right? So you don't have that kind of pressure of the team. However, it's a very social environment. Lots of other athletes around you. So, tons and tons of options, no right answer. You've really got to know your child, and it's really about finding that intersection that is an environment that works for them and something they actually enjoy. And that's the magic. Okay? And that's kind of what I'm getting at here. This is a journey, and I think it's actually a journey for everybody, right? Every human is on this journey of figuring out, how do I stay healthy? What are activities that I like? I think there are an awful lot of adults who sort of get pigeonholed into thinking like, oh, I have to go to the gym, and they don't like going to the gym, so then they never go to the gym, right? And then it's like this vicious cycle. So I think if kind of our approach to this is instead, you know what, let's keep exploring. Let's keep exploring for the child. Let's try this. Let's try this. If something sticks, amazing, right? And you can continue. But really that, as I said, that magic intersection is an activity they enjoy and an environment that really allows them to feel supported and to grow in that activity.